Women will never admit these weaknesses, not because they're hiding them, but because they're dying for a man strong enough to notice. Most men only see the surface. Skin curves, a perfect smile. But beneath her body is tension, a storm she doesn't understand, a desire she can't confess. She doesn't want your compliments, show into your presence. She doesn't want your approval. She wants to feel you're rich. You're not here to impress, you're here to read her. To see the flicker in her eye when you go silent. To catch the hesitation in her voice when she's fine. To recognize the crack behind her string. This isn't manipulation. This is masculine mastery, sexual unshakable. You're not here to expose her. You're here to remain calm while she exposes herself. And that's what makes you dangerous. There's something unspoken that many never admit, an inner craving she doesn't talk about, even to herself. She walks with confidence, carries herself with grace, and seems in complete control. But behind that strength, there's a desire that runs deeper. It's not about giving up power, it's about feeling safe enough to let go. She doesn't want someone who controls her. She wants someone who can hold space for her. Not a man who pleads or performs, but a man who simply is, grounded, steady, present. What she longs for isn't domination, it's containment, emotional containment. The feeling that someone can witness all of her fears, her fire, her longing, and not be shaken. That kind of presence doesn't demand, doesn't try to impress. It just stands there, calm and clear, and in doing so creates a sense of safety that lets her soften. She might test that, not because she wants conflict, but because she wants to feel your center. If you lose yourself in her storm, she can't trust you. But if you remain steady, you become her anchor. In a world that often tells her to always be strong, always be in control, she's exhausted. She's buried her deeper desires beneath layers of "I'm fine and I don't need anyone." But her body remembers. Her energy reveals what her words try to hide. She may say she's not looking for connection, but her eyes linger, her breath catches, her guard slips when she feels truly seen. Her second craving is even more vulnerable, emotional nakedness. Not physical exposure, but the deep relief of being understood without having to explain. She wants someone who can see past the script, into the soul. Someone who doesn't just hear what she says, but senses what she means. Most men listen to words, but the attuned man listens between the lines. He's emotionally fluent. He doesn't panic when she's messy. He doesn't run when she's uncertain. He stays. That presence is magnetic. It's not about being stoic in the cold, distant sense. It's about being emotionally sovereign. Not reactive, not performative, just steady. When a man knows who he is, without needing validation, a woman feels it. She relaxes into it, because she no longer has to carry it all. That is when real connection begins, not in control, but in trust. Not in games, but in grounded honesty. That's what she craves, even if she doesn't yet have the words for it. Judged by action, not by performance. When she laughs a little too loud, presents herself as flawlessly composed, or insists she's completely unbothered, he doesn't just see the surface. He sees the human behind the armor, and when he finally speaks, it isn't to flatter or impress, it's to connect. He simply says, "You don't have to pretend with me." And that moment, simple, clear, grounded, creates emotional intimacy. That's the real seduction. Not through charm, but through presence. Here's something most don't talk about. Many women say they want peace. But unconsciously, some are drawn to emotional intensity, not because they want to suffer, but because emotion is the language of connection. When she creates tension, tests your reaction, or pulls away suddenly, it's rarely about causing harm. It's about seeking containment. She wants to know, can you handle me at my most unfiltered? Will you lose yourself when I lose my center? This is her next vulnerability. And your power isn't in reacting. It's in not reacting. You don't chase, you don't scold, you don't collapse into drama. You observe, breathe, and respond with clarity. That stillness, that's where real masculine strength lives. As Seneca said, if you want to win, learn to endure without complaint. When you stay calm, she feels something deeper than dominance. She feels safety. That's when she softens. Not because you won, but because you refuse to fight a battle that never needed to happen. That's what holding the masculine frame really means. Emotional steadiness, not control. And then, there's fantasy. Every woman has one. Not always about candlelight or flowers, but about surrender. Not surrendering to a man's ego, but to his depth. She dreams of a man who makes her feel small, not in value, but in contrast to his presence. Someone who helps her step out of her head and back into her body. The problem: most men are either too hesitant to lead, or too desperate to be liked. And so, she escapes into fiction because real-life options feel emotionally underwhelming. That's where the grounded man stands apart. He doesn't become her fantasy, he becomes her reality. A living embodiment of steadiness, passion, and conscious intention. He leads without pushing. He touches without seeking permission from insecurity. He speaks truth without needing agreement. And in doing so, he replaces her daydreams with a deeper, more visceral truth. He becomes the experience she didn't even realize she was waiting for. This isn't about performance or manipulation. It's about embodiment. The power of a man who knows who he is, and doesn't need to prove it. That presence rewrites everything. It turns attraction into trust. It turns fantasy into fulfillment. 5. The I'm fine lie. She's not okay, but she doesn't say it directly. Instead, her tone goes flat. Her texts get shorter. Her energy pulls back, and her eyes, they're saying everything she can't put into words. This is her 5th vulnerability: emotional communication through contradiction. She's not trying to confuse you. Her emotional world is simply complex. She wants you to feel what she means, not just hear what she says. Where most men get it wrong is by panicking or pulling away. The grounded man, the emotionally present man, does neither. He listens to the space between her words. He reads her silence. He feels the energy shift. And instead of reacting with frustration or fear, he leans in with stillness. He says, "You don't have to talk right now, but I see something's going on, and I'm here when you're ready." That simple presence without pressure or panic is everything. Because when a woman feels emotionally understood, she opens, not because you pushed, but because you stayed. She doesn't need you to solve her. She needs you to stay calm enough to see her. 6. The validation loop. She may pop up out of nowhere. A like here, a hey, just checking in there. It might confuse us, especially if you haven't spoken in weeks. But it's not always about missing you. Sometimes it's about validation. Attention, for many, becomes a kind of emotional currency. If you respond quickly, emotionally, eagerly, you unknowingly feed that need. But the grounded man sees the pattern. He's not cold or rude, he's just not emotionally available for ego games. He knows the difference between connection and control. So when she reaches out for validation, he doesn't punish or ignore. He simply doesn't perform. He responds when it's genuine, not when it's bait. And strangely, that restraint creates a new kind of intrigue. Not because he plays hard to get, but because he's already whole. The man who doesn't feed her ego ends up living rent-free in her mind. Not through manipulation, but through 7. The identity overload. She's been told to be everything: independent, soft, driven, sexy, untouchable, nurturing, and so much of it contradicts. She wants a man who's kind but strong, gentle but grounded. She wants to feel safe but also alive. And sometimes she doesn't know what she wants because her identity is still evolving. This is her 7th vulnerability, not confusion, but complexity. She's navigating who she is in a world that gives her mixed messages. She may be confident by day and craving softness by night, and that's okay. She doesn't need fixing. She doesn't need a man to define her. She needs one thing: a steady presence. A man who doesn't react to her shifts, who doesn't demand consistency while she's still exploring. A man who says, "You don't have to have it all figured out around me, I'll stay steady." That kind of emotional stability creates trust. Because in a world that asks her to wear so many masks, the man who stays rooted becomes her home. 8. The 2 strong acts. She walks like a queen, head high, voice sharp, bills paid, boundaries firm. She seems unshakable, untouchable. And you might assume she doesn't need anyone, but you'd be wrong. That's strength. It's not a rejection of love, it's a survival response. She had to be strong. Because trust once cost her safety. Because softness got punished. Because some men folded when she needed them most. So she armored up, not out of ego, but out of necessity. And now, beneath that strength, lives a craving she rarely admits. That craving to let go, not to be dominated but to be led. By a man who doesn't flinch in the face of her fire. A man who won't collapse when she challenges him. A man who can look her in the eye and calmly say, "We're doing it this way," and mean it with love, not force. That's what melts her when her storm meets your stillness. When her edge meets your calm. When your strength doesn't silence her but holds her. Because in truth, a powerful woman doesn't want to fight a man. She wants to trust one who won't fold under pressure. 9. The spiral of thought. Ever watched her mind spin? You say something small, harmless even, and hours later, she's still turning it over. Building stories, questioning everything, not because she's irrational, but because she processes differently. Women don't think in lines, they think in loops. Emotion is not linear, it's layered. She replays things not to blame you, but because she can't escape the loop, and logic won't save her here. Explaining won't ground her. What does your presence? The grounded man doesn't argue with the storm. He interrupts it with energy, not explanation. He gently reaches for her, looks into her eyes and says, "Come back, you're here now." He doesn't pull her forcefully, he anchors her softly. She doesn't need to be put in her place. She needs to be brought back to her place, which is the present moment, with someone she feels safe enough to be real around. It's not about dominance. It's about emotional attunement. The man who helps her drop out of her head and into her body, that's the real seduction, not control. Not intensity, but grounded safety. Here's the truth. Women are not weak, but they do have vulnerabilities, emotional, sensual, psychological. Not flaws, just deeper layers. Your job isn't to exploit them. Your job is to understand them, to stay steady in the face of chaos, to remain rooted when everything around you sways. That is masculine power. Quiet, centered, calm, because a woman will test your emotions, not out of cruelty but out of instinct. And when you remain unmoved, she feels safe enough to stop fighting, not because you conquered her, but because you gave her something she could finally rest in. That's not control. That's leadership. That's connection. If you've ever stood your ground not out of pride, not from ego, but from presence. If you've ever held your emotional center while she tested your strength, knowing it wasn't about winning, it was about showing her she was safe to let go. If you've ever chosen stillness over reaction, clarity over chaos, awareness over control, then you already know what it means to lead with quiet strength, to hold your frame, not to overpower, but to provide safety, not to demand respect, but to inspire it. Drop a comment below and type aware if that resonates, not to prove anything, but to mark your place in this space of grounded masculinity, a place where depth replaces dominance, where power is presence, where leadership begins within. And if you're ready to keep growing in that space, to go deeper into polarity, connection, psychology, and conscious masculine energy, like this video, and subscribe to the channel, because this isn't content, this is a mirror. And if something in you is waking up, it means you're ready to remember the man you've always been.